This is Aaron Rice with Maryland Climate Tech 2026, and I'm here with two new and good friends. Delicia, why don't you let people know who you are, what you do, and where you do it?
Hi, I'm Delicia. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm a mechanical engineer and I'm in the construction industry, focusing on providing clean, indoor, healthy environments.
Excellent, excellent. And what's the name of your firm? And expand on that a little bit.
Name of my firm is HEMPSULATION. We are a non-toxic, zero carbon footprint insulation provider. We can use in commercial, residential, mixed use, you name it. Wherever there's a need to insulate, we're there.
Okay, when you say hempsulation, I'm thinking hemp, cannabis. Is that along the same lines?
Yes,
Hmm.
our primary ingredient is industrial hemp. That's what makes us non-toxic, zero carbon footprint, good for humans, better for the environment.
I'm very excited about this. Delisa and I have known each other for about 30 years or so. But Rebecca, I just met you. Why don't you let people know kind of who you are, what you do, and where you do it?
Great. Well, I'm so excited to get to know you through this and to get to partner with Delicia. I've loved working with her over my past couple of years in real estate. So I have a very non-conventional background for working in real estate. So I'm the co-founder of Rooted Communities. We are a DC-based social and environmental impact-oriented real estate developer. And I live, work, and play here in DC, says the rest of our team. And actually, in terms of my background, it's a very DC background in a lot of ways. I started off in law and in nonprofit management, human rights work. I did supply chain work, and then I moved into fashion, which is where I learned more about hemp and the amazing properties of hemp. I'm also originally from North Carolina, and my family's from the Carolinas. And I have seen the good and the bad in terms of what can happen when you use materials like hemp, what hemp can do for people and for economies and for homes, as well as what the bad stuff, what we call the pink stuff, looks like,
Yes.
which we'll be getting into. So that's kind of me and some of my background. And then I'm proud to say that we are having this conversation in our home, which includes the Rooted Communities office as well as an impact-oriented salon space. And it's fully hemp-insulated,
Yes.
and we don't have any air or heat on at the moment.
Oh, wow. And what's the temperature set to?
Right now, I can check. I think it was like 73
Okay.
or because
Okay.
we put the heat on overnight,
Hmm.
but we don't even really need to run it during the day when it's in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
So this is a critical conversation, especially for, our theme, which is, housing is healthcare, the case for climate resilient, healthy homes. And then we take a deeper dive. Kind of our subtitle is, the impacts of radon gas, asthma triggers, wildfire smoke, and sea level rise. I know that's kind of a mouthful, but the reason that we did that is because Maryland's facing five or six really kind of seismic events. Number one, Baltimore City has the highest rate of asthma-related fatalities in the nation, with African American women four times more likely to die from asthma than white men, and African American children six times more likely to die from asthma than white children. So, the conversation about health and wellness is very much important to us, especially when we're talking about Maryland's climate law called the Maryland Climate Solutions Now Act, the most aggressive climate law in the nation. All of our buildings, 35,000 square feet or more, need to be net zero by 2040. So that's a challenge. We've got more historic architecture here in Baltimore than New York and DC combined, more than any other city in the country. We've got a big radon issue. Radon gas is an issue here in Maryland. One in four homes here in Maryland have radon levels above the EPA action limit of 4.4 picocuries per liter. So, we've got a lot of builders, developers, policymakers, nonprofit organizations that are going to be watching this and looking for, whether it's technology or different solutions. We mentioned before we kind of hit the record button that our industry, unfortunately, is the least digitized. Declining in productivity has a strong resistance to change. And so it doesn't sound like, Delicia, you ran up against any of those objections or challenges. And you're working with Rebecca. It seems like she was very much willing to, kind of try something new. But I'm sure that's not always the case. How do you overcome some of the barriers of not only being in a male-dominated marketplace, but also coming with something new to an industry that's used to doing the same thing for the last 200 years?
Well, we launched in 2021, and the first 2 years of launching were centered on just educating people. Most
Mhm,
people don't think about what's behind their walls.
mhm, mhm,
So once we piqued that like interest, people are like, oh, well, yeah, I should know what's behind my walls.
mhm,
So once we can educate people on, the toxins that are living inside the insulation, why we're having poor indoor air quality, then people start to think about I should include an insulation that is non-toxic, not only for me at living inside, but then also, the workers who are producing the insulation, installing the insulation.
mhm,
So once we educate folks on insulation itself and the toxins of fiberglass, renewable, and that there's a natural solution, um, that kind of pushes them over. Of course, the next question is cost. And then my answer to that is, well, what's most important? Your health? What foods do
mhm,
you buy?
mhm,
Do you like to wear certain clothes that keep you warmer
mhm,
versus colder?
mhm,
So that's how we kind of push our clients into to moving to the side of using an insulation product that is natural, sustainable, renewable, has a positive effect on human health and the environment.
mhm.
That's all we can do.
Right, right. So, when I think of insulation, wall insulation, I'm thinking of someone in a full kind of mock suit or protective suit and a respirator. Do your insulators need to use that or no?
Absolutely not.
Really?
Nope. Nope. So with the pink stuff we all know about, yes, they have to suit up because if a speck of that insulation gets onto the skin, it irritates. Breathing in the fibers of that insulation irritates the lungs. So with our natural insulation, you as an individual, you don't need a license, you don't need to suit up. You could install this insulation on your own.
Oh,
So
really?
that's the benefit. You don't have
Mhm.
to hire a specialized contractor to
I,
install.
and I'll just chime in and say I personally touched the installation. I've like I had Delicia, I sent her a photo
She
of
did
this
a
of me
photo
like
shoot.
literally like laying across the insulation. We've had
Yes.
our kids touch it. There's a part in the process for our home, which we can get into if we want today, where we got really hands-on. And my husband, who also is a civil engineer, at one point we just had to get it done moment where he was actually personally installing the insulation. And I do have asthma. And
Mm,
I do have sensitive skin.
mm.
And so, I can personally speak to that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Having an engineer and an attorney as a client is not every contractor's dream scenario because there can be. I'm married to an engineer, so I know the questions that she loves to ask. Being cautious and perfectly accurate. But it sounds like the value proposition was so overwhelming, Rebecca, that especially coming from having respiratory issues to decide to go in this direction. Kind of what does that mean for you, your family, to know that you're living in this?
Absolutely. Well, and I want, Delicia, since you are really in the weeds on this, being an engineer yourself, to speak some about the R value, and just the performance quality is just as good, if not better. So you
Mm,
think about, what job is the pink stuff there for?
mhm,
Well, it's there to provide insulation. And so R value is how that's going to be measured. And so the properties there for insulation are just as high, if not higher. But
mhm,
then, yes, in terms of the asthma piece, my daughter's like okay now, but towards the end of the pandemic, she was very young. She was having a lot of respiratory issues. At one point, we brought her into Children's National, and she's okay. And we think that it was kind of a pandemic thing where she just was in school and then got all the things at once. But for me, like when I get a cold, it takes me a lot longer to get over it. And I do use an inhaler. And it's something that, I don't want to have to worry about this in our own home. So we have high quality hospital grade filtration in our home, which like the HEPA filters are not that much more expensive to get. Certainly recommend those as well. But if you're thinking about air quality overall, I mean, what's in your walls, like whatever you put in, it's going to be a really, really long time before you would even take that wall open and bring it out. So it's going to be there for a while. And on a personal note, and I told Delicia this the first time that we met. So my grandmother grew up in South Carolina and grew up in poverty, and she's an amazing, amazing woman who's done incredible things with her life, like integrating the schools in North Carolina and living in Indonesia. And growing up, in poverty, you take the jobs that are available. So her father worked with asbestos and he died of asbestosis.
Mhm.
And he died young of asbestosis, and she remembers being there when he passed away. And for me, just having that in my family history and having that in the history of so many people in this country, when you think about workers, and for me, like labor rights are a really big through line in my career. So, yes, there's my family's health, but you really want to care for workers. And then societally, you don't want to put working class people in positions where they're going to have medical issues. Not only is it a human rights issue, but
Right.
it's a societal issue because then what are we going to do when people do develop those issues? And let's say that a bunch of it falls on someone's skin or gets in someone's
Yeah.
airways.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that we're contending with this climate law that we have in Maryland, we're simply following DC's lead. The District of Columbia is probably about 10 years ahead of Maryland when it comes to building energy performance.
All
Very
right.
aggressive. There's not a net zero mandate, but very aggressive. Montgomery County, kind of same thing. But me being an indoor air quality nerd, I walk around with these indoor air
Yeah.
quality monitors, right?
Okay.
I come to the space from finding radon in my home. I was reading Dr. Joseph Allen's book called Healthy Buildings. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you
Obsessed.
do. You've read it?
I love it. And I've met him and he walks around with that monitor. He brings it up.
Yes.
He's a great, great person, great leader. And I think that book is fantastic. It's super accessible. So you can nerd out and get really into it. Or even if you like don't care that much about real estate, but you just don't want to be sick, you read it.
That book changed my life. So in
Check
the book, he talks about measuring for radon.
for a copy.
Okay.
Yeah, he talks about measuring for radon, and that radon gas can come from granite countertops. And we just renovated our kitchen, put in granite countertops. I was like, oh, what? So I got a monitor and that had a radon sensor in it. And lo and behold, we found that we had radon here in Randallstown, Maryland at very high levels, 15, 20 picocuries per liter, which equates to smoking 20 to 40 cigarettes a day. So that's kind
Wow.
of how and we've been here for 25 years. And our son stays, he recently graduated from Towson and he stays in the lower level of the home. And so I panicked, I freaked out. I've been a real estate practitioner for 25 years, and it's like I know about radon, but I never thought to test my own home. And so that's kind of how I come to the space of indoor air and really focusing on the health and wellness. But the point back to the building energy performance standard is there's no language in there in regards to ventilation and increasing ventilation. And we know that that's from the cognitive effects study that was done at Syracuse University. Shouts out to the Syracuse University Building of Excellence, or Center of Excellence. That indoor air quality ventilation is a challenge, and we're so much focused on energy reduction and removing combustibles and going to all electric, thinking that healthy indoor air comes along for the ride, and it doesn't. And so I guess the question I have, Delicia, is when it comes to energy efficiency, I know that the indoor health and wellness part, but for when it comes for energy efficiency, how are you having those conversations with potential clients?
Well, our insulation product, the plant itself, industrial hemp plant, is naturally gives a higher thermal performance than your synthetic insulations like fiberglass, mineral wool, rock wool. So it's the best choice if you're concerned about energy efficiency. As Rebecca mentioned earlier, she doesn't have to run her AC
Hmm.
as often. So you get a clean indoor air quality along with a higher efficiency.
Hmm.
Uh, over the next 5 years, I would say, as more and more case studies come out to show this, then the industry as a whole will gravitate towards having natural insulations like an industrial hemp insulation. Um, I would add that on top of being energy efficient, we have to also really think about the climate, right? So with climate change and the building industry codes requiring us to be more efficient, insulation is going to play a higher role. And so we want to make sure that as we make our buildings more efficient, that we aren't having a negative impact on the environment itself. So we have these extreme weather conditions, places that normally were warm are now colder, places that were colder, more warm. We want to make sure that as we're being efficient with our buildings, that we're also being efficient with our environmental responsibility as well.
And I'd love to just give a quick data point on that if you want. It's just one data point, but it's one that I can personally attest to. So we live in DuPont Circle. This home and the home that we lived in previously were both built in the 1890s. And there was an unfortunate situation in our new home where there was a fire on the inside and a lot of the interior burned down. But honestly, being real estate practitioners, it gave us the opportunity to have a clean slate for what we design. So these are both older homes. In our last home, there were certainly like little gaps that we couldn't really get at, and it was a condo building. Our home right now, because it includes the salon space and the office, and we've had kids and just a lot more space, it's maybe it's about 2 times larger, a little more than 2 times larger. And our bills are less expensive, especially in the winter, because I talked to Delicia about this. Like it does cut down on your air conditioning quite a bit, but there's some level where like the sunlight will come through the window, so there's that effect as well. But I've been really surprised that there have been times where it has been below freezing outside that we have not needed to have the heat on
Mhm.
because you get it hot and then it just stays there for a while.
Yeah.
I
So
Go
our
ahead.
insulation naturally absorbs the moisture in the air. So when you're trying to, heat or cool your space, it all depends on the amount of moisture in the air. So if the insulation itself is naturally absorbing the moisture in the air,
Mhm.
that's helping to reduce the effort of your heating and cooling system to.
Yeah, it's amazing how multifaceted it is too, because it's, just really what insulation needs to have when you think about those moisture properties.
So does it also absorb carbon as well?
Yes, not necessarily while it's in the home, but during its growing phase, it
Right, right.
absorbs
Okay.
carbon in the air. And a lot of plants do absorb, but industrial hemp itself absorbs the most carbon. So you're looking at a negative carbon footprint material that you're installing.
Okay, so let me get this right. From a operational embodied carbon, like check that box. From a energy efficiency perspective, kind of check that box. From a kind of health and wellness, not only of the building occupant, but from the actual producers, from the warehouse, the whole supply chain, from the warehouse to actual installation. There's no respirators required or, personal protective equipment. Um, the I'm sure Marylanders would love to hear this because another thing that I forgot to mention about Maryland is we've got the highest utility bills in the nation. Annual utility bills around $6,500. Rebecca, I'm shy and afraid to ask you how much your annual electric bill is, but I think it's worth asking the question based on the
So,
conversation that we're
so
having.
because of us being new into this home, we don't have a full year's worth because of
Okay.
us adding on to
If you could
the
estimate
home.
what you think it
But
might
if I
be.
had to estimate, I mean, it's definitely lower than that.
Well, yeah, yeah. Wow.
It's definitely lower than that. And our home right now is 2,400 square feet,
Hmm.
which is about the size of the average home in the United States. So it feels very spacious here in DC. Um, but I imagine it's something that a lot of Marylanders could relate to that size.
$545 a month is what that $6,500 breaks down to. I know our
Yeah,
energy
yeah.
bill
I
doubled.
don't think we've even hit that once.
Wow, that's amazing. On a home built in 18.
1890, so
Wow.
1896.
Wow.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And there's some other things that we did too to seal it up as well.
Hmm.
So because like cancellation is a really important piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
But we have a friend who created the first net zero ADU in DC, and she describes it as you're creating a really great thermos. So when we were building this home, we used like the Intello Plus to really get like the cracks sealed. And it was interesting because it was hard to get a contractor open to doing this. So my husband actually did a lot of it. But he's like, this is kind of cool. I'm like in here working on the home that I'm going to be living in. So you really want to seal it up. And there's some great products out there. And I think you just need to be innovative and creative around what you do. But creating that seal, we
Hmm.
spent a long time debating about whether or not we would add solar into our home.
Hmm.
But being a row house, that is really, it's narrow. Actually, it's narrower than would be allowed to be built today based on building code. So it's a very narrow house that's long. And in terms of the fact that we need to have some equipment up on the roof,
Hmm.
we just felt like we would be able to do better with the hemsolation and the ceiling than if we added solar. And frankly, we also really wanted a roof deck for our enjoyment.
Right.
Yeah, the rooftop is really nice. You made the right decision.
So I'm hearing nothing but great things about this product and the service and the benefits. What would you say, Delicia, is the biggest barrier that needs to be overcome from the industry for more adoption, wider adoption?
We just need more people to make the decision that they want to go the natural insulation route. They want to use hemsolation in their buildings. We need building codes to say non-toxic insulation. Let's be really intentional about the the toxins that are in materials. And it's not just insulation. You can find it in furniture. You can
Yeah.
find it everywhere. And so the Consumer Protection Agency, say, hey, we don't want this in our homes anymore.
Yeah.
Lead-based paint, once upon a time, was in all of our homes, and we don't have that anymore. So I think that's where the insulation market needs to head towards. It's not necessary. We have options. We have solutions that are viable and sustainable, renewable. We can do good by having better, healthier homes, and then also address climate change and the other things that are most important to us having a good life here on this earth.
It's amazing when you think about it, and this is in the clothes that we wear as well as the textiles that are in our homes, because our homes are filled with textiles. Like they can have formaldehyde in them.
Right.
So you think about, skin issues, especially with children, with children's clothing, you see this and you see this in
Hmm.
homes. And I think that, there's always going to be trade-offs because you want to have high performance fabrics too, sometimes with things like, say, a sunbrella fabric where there's a high level of durability, but it's also made with chemicals. But I think that's the space that we need to be inhabiting
Right.
together, is thinking about how do we have things that are less toxic, that have those performance qualities. And that's why it's really exciting to me to see something like hemsolation where there isn't going to be a performance sacrifice.
Right. We
Right.
don't sacrifice performance. Formaldehyde can be found in many insulation products, and
Hmm.
that's a major cause of asthma, as we were
Hmm.
talking about
That's
earlier.
my sugar for sure.
Right. So a lot of the insulation products that are on the market now, synthetic in
Hmm.
particular, they'll they'll market themselves as green and sustainable, but they still have toxins, and these toxins are listed under names we don't recognize. Or exchange one, toxin for another toxin, like, oh, it's
Sounds
formaldehyde
like
free.
you've read Dr. Allen's book because he talks about that in this book as well.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I'll read
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But the
you can
information is
borrow my
out there.
copy.
Okay, I'll borrow your copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an exciting new time for us as, as consumers. We get more educated, we're more informed about what we put in our bodies, what we put in our walls. It makes a huge difference on our life and health and well-being. So I'm excited to be a part of this journey. Like Rebecca, I've had friends and family members that have been, sick and died because of exposure to asbestos and other environmental toxins that it's not necessary.
Well,
We know,
you grew up in and around Cancer Alley and near Baton Rouge, but I mean, between there and New Orleans, I mean, that's
yeah,
Cancer Alley, right?
yes. And within my family, high, not just my family, but the entire state,
Yeah.
we're amongst the highest rates of cancer.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
when you come to our state, I didn't realize it growing up, but yeah, we have a different smell. And it's
I'm
because of all of these plants that we have. They're trying to do better now. We know better, we can do better,
hmm hmm
but we just we have to be intentional about how we purchase the goods, materials that we put into our walls and our bodies. So my goal within the construction industry is to help us have reduce our carbon footprint and also make healthier living spaces for building occupants and as well as the people who manufacture our construction materials,
Yeah.
our firefighters, everyone's impacted when we use synthetic toxic insulation. So we're here.
This is amazing. So Delicia, as we close out, how did Howard University prepare you for the place and the space that you're sitting in right now?
That's my heart, Howard University.
Hate you.
You know? Um, Howard, I
We're
was a
also
kid.
only a mile away from Howard right
Yeah,
now, too.
I'm still here. I haven't left since I was 18, 10 years ago. Um, not. But Howard, I can't put into words. Howard just gave me something that I can't describe. I mean, being an engineering student, it just taught us we can we can make the world a better place by just being problem solvers. So that's what I've just focused on, trying to um, create solutions to make here um, in this time a better, easier place.
Absolutely. And Rebecca, how would you say that Duke University prepared you to be in the space that you're in?
So that's a great question. So for me, I was very involved in religious life when I was in college, and I grew up with a lot of pastors in my family, but I needed to find my own way there. And I spent a lot of my time in college just kind of figuring out who am I and what do I want and what do I believe.
hmm
So I think that combination of really delving into social justice, into community care, really igniting, frankly, some of the hypocrisy of the consumptive choices that I'm making and lighting a fire in me to be more thoughtful
hmm
about the choices that I make as a consumer and their impacts on people around the globe. And I'd say I studied abroad in London, and that completely changed my life in terms of like I've been interested in urbanism, but I realized I am an urbanite and I'm never going back.
hmm
So it took me a little while to find my way to DC, and I thought that DC would be too small, literally and figuratively. But the culture of DC has really captivated me, and I feel like I found what I loved in London there. And just thinking about what we're doing at Rooted Communities in terms of urban development. I mean, there's been a huge kind of post-pandemic movement in real estate to focus on the Sun Belt, to focus on areas that are more suburban or even more rural.
hmm
And for us as a mission-oriented company, we are urbanists and we are proud of the fact that this afternoon, when we're going to be taking our kids to various activities, we're not going to be hopping in a car. We're going to be doing biking and we're going to be doing public transportation. And we live in a city and love what cities can bring in terms of the diversity, the intellectual capital,
Yep.
and really the servant leadership here in DC, which I think Delicia is one of my many friends who embody that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I guess I have one final question. Rebecca, you mentioned you had a friend who built the first net zero ADU in DC. My assumption, I'm making a big assumption here, is that home was built in a factory as opposed to on-site. It's an assumption, but I guess my question kind of is for you and for Delicia is, working and talking to a lot of subject matter experts and thought leaders in the industrialized construction space, building homes in factories. And I guess my question to you, Lisa, is how are some of these manufacturers? There's a lot in Pennsylvania, a few in Delaware, but are you having conversations with the industrialized construction sector about your product?
When I just quickly jump in on that home to give
Yeah.
credit where credit's due. So my
Yeah.
friend who built this home has the coolest name, Aurora Ferrari, which
It
is
does.
more common in Italy than it is here. So she is Italian by origin and has a company called Innately Italy. And we also worked with them on a lot of eco products in our home. So shout
Shout
out.
out to Aurora.
And the article, you can find an article in the Washington Post where it's really Aurora doing a deep dive on what it took around a net zero ADU. And you can learn how it all came together. So, spoiler alert, it wasn't
Yeah.
just built in a factory and brought over here, and I've been inside of it.
Mm.
But I certainly want to segue into that question and give Delicia a chance. But I love the piece that the Washington Post did with Aurora there because it includes just a lot of really practical tips around how you do things that are beautiful and climate conscious and durable.
And we'll
Yeah.
make sure that that article appears in post. But so to confirm, you did say that it was built off site.
No,
It was not. It was built on site.
yeah, yeah.
Got
Hmm.
it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do think it's really important that we talk about this topic of things being built off site and coming into DC
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
And I visited, did I tell you? I went to Aurora's house.
So you've seen it too.
Yes, and it is fabulous. I
Okay.
want one. Yes, it is really nice. It's really nice. When I tell you insulation is all around us,
Hmm.
it is all around us. Not just the construction industry,
Hmm.
but cars, clothing, you name it. So for us in the construction industry, we're teaming up with other building suppliers and replacing what would have used a fiberglass or a rock wool or mineral wool to come to a natural insulation and using hemp as its insulator. So we're pretty excited about the future. Pipeline is looking really good, and we're going to have healthier buildings. We're doing our part.
I'm excited for the future of this industry. I'm excited about what you're doing. I think this is absolutely amazing, very innovative. And so, is there anything that I didn't ask either of you that you want our audience to know either about yourselves or the work that you're doing?
I'm sure, Rebecca.
I mean, there's a whole lot more that I could chat
We
about.
can we can geek out for hours, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would say I would just this is kind of broad level, but I would encourage people to not accept what is and to think about what's possible. I think that we're in a moment of chaos and crisis and challenge here in DC, and it's an extremely concerning time. And I think entrepreneurship is a big part of the way forward, especially social entrepreneurship and supporting women, supporting people of color, supporting, just those who are on the fringes of society with what's happening in our world right now and saying, okay, let's flip the script and let's think about the distinct value that, say, Black women entrepreneurs do bring to business. There's a lot of data out there. So let's lean into innovative ideas, let's try hard, and let's think about this as a moment when so much is being destroyed. To think about what we can build and how we can build it together and throwing out some of the scripts of yesterday and bringing the scripts of today. And that's what we're working on doing at Rooted Communities. And it has been quite a journey, which is a conversation for another time. But we're not giving up on urbanism, even though when a lot of people in real estate are,
Mhm.
we're not. We're going to stay and we're going to stay with what we believe because we believe in cities and we believe in downtowns and we believe in urbanism and we believe in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Mhm.
Well, I just heard a mic drop. Delicia, anything that I didn't ask you that you want people to know about yourself or the work that you're doing?
Um, about myself, I've been in this industry for 25 plus years. I've always been focused on green and sustainable with my engineering firm and just very passionate and intentional about how we function and live. So hempsulation, launching my insulation product was really important to me because I care
Mhm.
and I care about my friends, families, and everyone else out there to know that we don't we can have a better, space.
Mhm.
And we won't talk about ages, but once upon a time we played outside. We were rarely in the house. Only after the street lights came on, you had to be in the house.
Yeah.
Now we have our kids, they stay indoors. We work indoors
Yeah.
24/7. So the materials that are inside of our homes and our workplaces are even more important because we're not getting that fresh outdoor air like we used to. So when we're home and at work, just want to make sure that we have clean, safe places to retreat to.
And there's a whole chapter in Joe Allen's book that talks about this too, the percentage of time that we spend inside and how we need to really think about the indoor environment and then how the indoor and the outdoor interface with each other as well.
Have either of you calculated your indoor age?
No.
Oh, come on, Rebecca. You read the book. You didn't
I
pull out
have
the
not
calculator.
calculated my indoor age. 18.
So what's your indoor age?
So basically, for folks that are watching and not understanding what I'm saying, you just multiply your age by zero point 0.9. So I'm 56. My indoor age is 50.4. That basically means that I've spent 54 years of my life in a home, a train, a plane, a hotel, a car, indoors. And as Dr. Joseph Allen says, that we are an indoor air species. We're an indoor species. I've heard Simon Jones say something a little bit different that, we don't just occupy buildings, buildings occupy us. Like they're getting into our systems, into our bloodstreams, and unfortunately, they're making us sick. So I really appreciate the pathway that you're going by focusing on health and wellness of the building occupant. I think there needs to be more of that. And anything that we can do here in Maryland, up here in Baltimore to support your efforts, we're all for it. So with that, I'll anything else you wanted to add before we close out?
I would just add, you said that we spend most of our time, indoors, and the indoor air quality can be 2 to 5 times worse indoors than outdoors. So
Up to 100 times worse.
let's get outside and have a good time.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, I will bid you two good day, and I appreciate your time. Rebecca, it's a pleasure meeting you. And Delicia, it's great reconnecting with you as well.
Same here.
All right, guys. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.